All right, and to get the chat warmed up, we'd love to hear who's joining us today. I know there's folks from all over the region, so please feel free to introduce yourself, share where you're calling in from, or any exciting or interesting topics related to our webinar today that you'd like to share. And before we get started, I'll share a quick overview of our agenda for this afternoon. We'll have a short breakout between final presentations, but I encourage everybody to take care of themselves if they need a break. Please feel free to do so. I'll kick us off today with a short presentation about perennial bioenergy cropping systems and the environmental co-benefits of switchgrass, miscanthus, and native prairies. And then Brad Kasberg, a sustainable landscape specialist at Argonne National Laboratory, will guide us through a demonstration of Argonne's new decision support tool, SuperBeast, and how it can inform crop selection and site suitability. And then we'll hear from Travis Hedrick, who is the CEO of Agrotech and Polterra. He's going to share a little bit about the state of the miscanthus industry, as well as end-use opportunities for perennial bioenergy crops. And before we dive in, I just want to make sure we have this link accessible to everybody. If you're tuning in today and have any feedback or would like to take note of any topics that you were hoping to learn about today but didn't, I encourage you to share those ideas in this feedback form that Rachel's going to add to the chat. We'll share it again in the follow-up, so if you don't have any ideas coming to mind right now, that's okay, but just want to make sure that it's accessible for everybody during this presentation. And I also want to take a quick moment to thank our funders and share a little bit more about this project that this webinar is coming to you from. The Midwest Perennial Bioenergy Crop Diversification Project is a partnership between Argonne National Laboratory and American Farmland Trust. Funded by the Department of Energy's Bioenergy's Technologies Office, our project explores how to transition portions of marginal or low ROI areas of row crop ag land in the Midwest to grow perennial bioenergy crops, as well as addressing regional soil health and water quality improvement goals. And so we do all of this by providing direct technical assistance to farmers and landowners across the Midwest, as well as hosting webinars and workshops like these to provide education on perennial bioenergy crops, the market development, as well as other resources to support these transition of acres to perennials. And in addition to that, we also aim to support Argonne National Laboratory in the development of their new decision-making tool, which Brad will share a little bit more about after my quick presentation on perennial bioenergy crops themselves. And so to kick us off, I want to start by zooming out to focus on the suite of crops and the importance of perennial agriculture in this moment in time. And so perennial bioenergy crops are a group of herbaceous grasses and short rotation woody crops that can be grown for their biomass for processing in various forms of renewable energy and bio-based products. We'll get into details on the technologies and products later on in this webinar, but these crops can produce literal tons of biomass per acre and can be transformed into domestically produced fuels and products while providing benefits to soil health, water quality, and wildlife habitat, where they're grown for upwards of 15 to 20 years. Again, these are perennials, so they are a longer term investment. They have long growing timeframes, and so on average, we see lengthy periods of time where these crops can be grown and harvested. And so while there are many different plants that can be considered a perennial bioenergy crop, the most regionally relevant for the Midwestern agricultural landscape is switchgrass, miscanthus, native prairie mixes, shrub willow, and hybrid poplar. And I just wanted to mention too, in this presentation today, we're only going to be focusing on native prairie, switchgrass, and miscanthus. And so if you do have questions about some of the other crops that are listed here, please let me know. We have tons of resources that we can share as a follow-up if folks have interest in those. And so we kind of touched on the crops, but also let's focus on why perennial cropping systems and why now. Perennial agriculture has the potential to transform the Midwestern ag landscape and provide benefits to rural areas that can provide new economic development, as well as environmental benefits that can support regional sustainability goals. Perennial cropping systems provide continuous living cover to soils, which hold carbon in the soil long term. And because these cropping systems have extensive perennial root systems, there's an improvement in soil stability and reducing erosion and nutrient loss to adjacent waterways, thus improving regional and downstream water quality. And so not only do we see vast soil health improvements with perennial bioenergy crops, along with water quality improvements, but we also see enhanced biodiversity above and below ground. This is often observed on the farm by seeing upland game birds, increased deer browsing, and robust insect communities, in addition to a whole suite of other soil microbial diversity that's seen with these crops. And as we see greater impacts related to soil loss, erosion, and water quality in this region, it's important now more than ever to shift some of our land management practices in the region towards mitigating impacts like soil loss and dust storms that are becoming more prevalent here in the Midwest. And so to zoom back in, on the individual perennial bioenergy crops, we'll start with a quick overview of switchgrass. Switchgrass is a high biomass yielding C4 perennial grass native to the Midwestern landscape. And because it's adapted to this region, it provides prime habitat for ground nesting birds and other invertebrates. But it also has an extensive root system, like I said, that stabilizes soil, provides habitat for diverse soil microbial communities, and holds carbon in the soil long term. It's also a very tall grass. It can help mitigate some wind and also decrease evaporation because the grass is so tall. And so when growing switchgrass for bioenergy, it's important to know that there are a lot of nuances with selecting varieties for biomass cultivation, and some of the key considerations for selecting switchgrass varieties primarily depend on the geography and pre-treatment of the seed. Regionally adapted varieties will be most resilient during the establishment and throughout its approximate 10 to 15 year lifespan. And so typically, varieties fall within two broad categories. They're usually upland or lowland varieties. And upland varieties typically do better in the upper Midwest states and are more hardy through harsh winters, while the lowland varieties are better suited for more mild winter conditions in regions like southern Illinois and Missouri and in that lateral band of geography. And regardless of the variety of switchgrass, it is crucial to ensure whether the seeds are pre-treated or not. Typically, switchgrass seeds come in two forms of pre-treatment. They're either stratified or non-stratified. And stratified seed essentially means that it is treated to break dormancy and speed the germination time frame. So it determines the time in which seeding will take place. And these are really important to know, especially if you're in the establishment phase, trying to get a new stand established. That timing piece is crucial. And when you purchase seed, it will always say on the label whether it has any sort of pre-treatment, and will usually include recommendations on seeding timeframes. So usually that's provided by the seed company that you're purchasing from, but just very important considerations to make when selecting varieties if switchgrass is of interest of growing. And so, like I said at the beginning of this, perennial bioenergy crops are a long-term investment. Because they're perennial, they take up one space, typically have one establishment time frame. And considering this, most farmers don't have their first harvest until the third year after seeding. And so then economic returns aren't often seen until a few years into actually growing the crop and harvesting it. And so 2 years ago, our project worked with a team of consultants at Sierra View Solutions to conduct a market analysis of various perennial bioenergy crops. And this graphic right here on the screen shows, it basically shows a breakdown of production costs for switchgrass plots over 5 years of production. And these are estimates. They may vary, noting that input costs fluctuate. as well as depending geographically where you're located, some of these prices may be a little different as well. But really, seed costs for switchgrass are pretty comparable to cover crop seed, and they're often only a one-time expense for growers, as establishment really only requires one time. It's a one-time event. And management and harvesting costs typically persist on an annual basis, as well as inputs into the subsequent years after harvest. And so, like I said, typically you don't harvest until about year 3 or 4, depending on how tall that biomass is and how well it's established. And after harvests start, then it's recommended to put inputs back into that system to make sure that the subsequent harvests are just as healthy as the initial. And so that's a quick overview of switchgrass. I'm going to transition next to talk about native prairie for bioenergy. And similar to switchgrass and its production, native prairie mixes can also be grown for bioenergy end use. These crops often provide similar environmental co-benefits, but are often enhanced due to the diversity of the herbaceous grasses and forb species within the mixes. The trade-off with native prairie as a bioenergy crop, though, is that it's typically lower yielding than switchgrass. On average, you see about 3 to 6 tons per acre per annual harvest of dry material in native prairie. And with switchgrass systems, you typically see a boost in that yield per acre. Average harvests, like I said, 3 to 6 tons for native prairie, though. It is managed the same and has similar root systems, averaging about 100 tons per acre of below ground biomass. So really, this crop makes an incredible carbon sink. And I really love this image, even though it is a little blurry now that I see it blown up on my screen. It kind of depicts the diversity of plants in a native prairie mix, as well as the depth of the root systems at play. And really, you see tons of environmental co-benefits with these extensive and diverse root systems. And so not only can this perennial bioenergy crop provide an additional economic opportunity for farmers, but it also has cultural value, noting that prairie has historically dominated the Midwestern landscape and can be aesthetically beautiful due to the biodiversity and prime wildlife habitat that it provides. And very quickly here, I'll show just a quick table of some of the diverse species mixes that we've recommended to past farmers that we've worked with. This table has about 3 different mixes. I'm not going to go into the species within each mix, but just wanted to note that in this table here, typically, when you have a lower species count per mix, it's a little bit more cost effective, but the trade-off is that you have lower environmental benefits because of the decreased diversity. But when you increase species within a native prairie mix, you often see the price tag along with that, but also the increased environmental benefits too. And if folks in this webinar today are interested in growing native prairie mix for bioenergy and are just starting out, happy to talk through what mixes may be most appropriate, what establishment might look like, and just some of the different benefits or trade-offs related to growing each different level of diversity mixes. I do quickly want to mention too, I know I saw a lot in the registration of folks who mentioned they have CRP on their property. I really appreciate folks for sharing that information with us. That's really helpful to frame kind of who's in the room and how we can best serve the folks that we provide technical assistance to. And so I just wanted to call out that if you do have CRP contracts active right now, you cannot harvest that biomass. That will violate your CRP contract and potentially impact the cost share payments associated with that. So it is not recommended to harvest existing CRP ground that is in an active contract. However, there is a caveat with that in that if you have a contract that is about to expire, or you know that you are no longer going to have a CRP contract on an area that has native prairie or any sort of grassland, once that contract expires, you can harvest that biomass if you have a buyer and it seems economically viable for your situation. That's totally okay. But just wanted to call out that CRP is restricted on harvest, and we do not recommend that you do that because it could impact the active contract you may have. And so just kind of going back to the crop production and management component of these crops, I did just want to note that switchgrass and native prairie are very similar in their management practices. And a typical time frame for production activities include establishment in the fall or early spring, depending on that seed treatment, like I mentioned. And while AFT does not recommend tillage as a sound farming conservation practice, we acknowledge that it is required for that initial establishment of that crop. And once that crop is established, tillage is not required, and if anything, it may actually negatively impact the stand if you try to till through it or disturb that soil. And so the remainder of that crop's lifespan will not require tillage. And so just to back up a little bit more, seeding can take place, but will require a few years, like I said, for that stand to establish enough biomass for a harvest. And so during that establishment timeframe, it's recommended to mow or prescribe burn the stands to encourage below ground establishment of those root systems. And later on in that crop's lifespan, it will correlate to higher biomass present above ground. And so typically once harvest starts, it's also recommended to add nutrients back into that soil to maintain the health of the system. And that can happen after year 3 or whenever that first harvest takes place. And typically both of these crops have very similar equipment and storage needs. For seeding and establishment, seeding drills and mowers are commonly used. Rotary head mowers and balers are also used for harvest and storage of the crops. And I will note that round or square bales are usually fine to harvest and store these crops, but it is going to be more cost effective to transport square bales. So when considering growing these crops, it's important to know who your buyer may be, how far you have to travel, what those travel expenses look like, and if transporting square bales versus round bales are more cost effective. That's something you would have to consider once the buyer has been coordinated. And so, yeah, just hay cutting equipment is pretty commonly used, as well as common seed drills that are very prevalent in the Midwest. And next, I want to kind of switch gears a little bit and touch briefly on miscanthus as a perennial bioenergy crop. Travis is going to share a little bit more about this when he talks about the state of the miscanthus industry. But just from AFT's perspective, we like to share a lot about miscanthus and provide technical assistance as we see that there are a lot of emerging market opportunities for this crop. But very quickly, miscanthus is a large warm season grass native to Asia. The varieties that are recommended for perennial bioenergy crop production are modified to be sterilized hybrids. That reduces any invasive potential and also increases the biomass yields. And so the most common variety that's well adapted for the Midwest is called Miscanthus giganteus. The University of Illinois' Energy Farm has been conducting extensive research on this crop, as well as a number of other species. And this is a beautiful picture from the Energy Farm, kind of an aerial view showing some of the miscanthus plots there. But this is a very high biomass yielding crop, extremely productive on marginal soils, and also has a variety of soil health benefits similar to those of switchgrass and native prairie. They also require very minimal inputs and do well on a variety of different soil types. And unlike switchgrass and miscanthus, or switchgrass and native prairie, miscanthus is grown by rhizomes, and they're fast growing once they're established, but it is crucial that when procuring rhizomes for perennial bioenergy crop production, that you verify the species and make sure that it is an actual sterilized variety like Miscanthus giganteus and not an ornamental variety that folks often see at greenhouses or other landscaping companies. And so that's very crucial once you're establishing it, is to just verify that it is a sterilized hybrid, it is a high biomass yielding variety, and that way that reduces any sort of risk related to establishment of that crop. And once it's transplanted and established, those rhizomes do take about 2 to 3 seasons for establishment and to see enough biomass above ground for a viable harvest. And equipment needs are a little bit different than what we see here in the Midwest, and require some specialized equipment or modifications to older equipment. And so rhizomes do need to be transplanted. A lot of times we see people attempting to hand transplant them, which is totally fine and very cost effective, but it does come at a high labor cost. And so for folks who want to do equipment establishment, or if you're trying to establish a large acreage of miscanthus, transplanters are recommended. There are some specialized transplanters out there for miscanthus rhizomes, but we've also seen farmers modify potato transplanters as well as tobacco planters to establish miscanthus across different regions of the U.S. And so there are ways to be innovative about it and to make it a little bit more cost effective than purchasing specialized equipment. And for harvest of miscanthus, forage choppers and wagons are typically best suited if the biomass is going to be chipped. Baling the material is acceptable, but sometimes the buyer may determine the state of the harvested material. And I imagine Travis will maybe touch on that in a bit here, so I won't belabor that. But yeah, unlike conventional crops in the Midwest, miscanthus can be harvested in colder months without impacts to the crop. And this can be ideal for adding an additional crop to a production schedule or a conventional operation, because harvest typically happens in the winter where, not much is happening in corn and soy systems or pasture systems during that time. I do want to quickly note that when you harvest, miscanthus does have a tendency to really wear down that equipment. It is an extremely silica-rich plant, and once it's harvested, it really wears down the blades of the harvester. So it's really important to accommodate additional time to make sure that there's regular sharpening happening during the harvest time frame, and just accounting for additional needs related to equipment for this crop. And so that's a high level overview of miscanthus. Like I said, I'm not going to belabor it too much, but I did just want to zoom back out and not focus too much on the individual crops, but just give a quick overview of what this time frame looks like, because I know I've mentioned piecemeal about some of the activities related to perennial cropping systems, but really just wanted to use this graphic as a way to map out a timeline for establishment, harvest, storage, etc. And so year one, depending on the crop, that could be the fall or the spring. That's when site preparation and planting and establishment will happen. And typically you want year 2 and 3 of those growing seasons to be primarily for establishment. If you have switchgrass or native prairies, sometimes burning or mowing can happen during that time to encourage more root growth. But typically harvests and nutrient application don't start until seasons 3 or 4 of growing that crop. And then from there, storage and annual harvests can take place annually after that. And so just wanted to share a little high-level overview of that just to get us back on track. And I'll wrap up here quickly by just noting some of the economic benefits of all of these crops. And while there's still many of these crops are still novel to the region and the markets are still developing, perennial bioenergy crops and their cropping systems offer an exciting potential for farmers and our region to offset the cost and dependence of traditional fuel sources and petroleum-based products. It also has the opportunity to grow all of these crops on marginal or unproductive farmland. And so that doesn't necessarily mean we are transitioning areas out of corn and soy totally, but integrating them strategically to address marginal characteristics of soil on the farm, and adding another revenue stream potentially too. And so another but obvious, maybe not so obvious economic benefit is that many of these crops increase hunting potential for upland game birds, deer, and other game, which adds value to not only agricultural land, but also recreational and private land too. And so, yeah, those are just a couple of the economic benefits. And of course, we're going to get into that a little bit more later on in this webinar, but just wanted to highlight that and then maybe provide a little bit more clarity on what end use can look like. I know we've used the term bioenergy a lot, and that seems kind of like a vague term, but really, when we're talking about bioenergy and the end use opportunities for these crops, we're really talking about the creation of liquid transportation fuels. We can also integrate these crops into anaerobic digestion systems for increased efficiency. So, folks who have livestock operations, or if there are regional digesters and municipal waste management systems, these are opportunities where this biomass can be integrated to increase the efficiency and get a higher quality gas out of those systems. And additionally, renewable natural gas can be created with perennial bioenergy crops, as well as localized on farm energy generation using small scale technologies like boilers that are biomass fired or combined heat and power situations that can feed biomass into those to create electricity and heat on the farm. And so there's a lot of opportunities there. And then also on the other side of that is the bio-based products opportunity, which is becoming a little bit more robust in terms of market development in this region. And so perennial bioenergy crops can be used for poultry and animal bedding, pet food additives, and other products related to kind of the pet industry, as well as thermo-molded products like compostable food packaging, as well as erosion control materials, like erosion control socks that help with water mitigation, and less of an actual product on the market, but something that I've seen miscanthus used for is for hunting blinds. So for folks who do a lot of waterfowl hunting, because these crops are so silica rich, they make excellent duck blinds and can be used for other alternative projects like that. And so those are just a few of the markets that we're seeing develop in this region over time, but I imagine Travis will have a little bit more information about those for us. And with that, I'm going to wrap up and answer any questions, and then we'll hear from Brad Kasberg on the Super Beast tool. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer those now, or I'll like check the chat too. I'm going to stop sharing my screen as well so I can see everybody. Okay, I see a lot in the chat. I do see some questions about restrictions of using prairie mix as bioenergy if they're established through CRP. Yes, I think I touched on that, but just as a quick reminder for folks, if you have CRP acres and you have an active, have an active contract, you do not want to harvest that material. But I know there was a lot of questions whether there would be CRP contracts being issued in the future. If you aren't able to renew your contract, or if you just want to get out of a CRP contract, that is a way to leverage those acres of grasslands. So beyond pheasants forever, where do you recommend sourcing native mixes? There's a whole variety of regional seed companies that have native prairie mixes that can be well suited for biomass production. I'm based in Illinois, and so a Prairie Moon Nursery comes up a lot for me. They have some good mixes, but there are also some seed companies out there that are specialized for biomass mixes. Ernst Seed Company has great switchgrass varieties as well as some native prairie mixes. And I'll have to do some digging, but those are the two that come up for me. But Ernst Seed has some really great options for switchgrass and different native prairie mixes. There any other questions? Yes, Emily, thank you. Milborn Seed out of South Dakota is also very good. All right. Well, appreciate you all for listening. If there are additional questions that come up, please add them to the chat, and I'll be here to help kind of move things along, but can also answer questions if they come up too. And I just wanted to share, we will send a follow-up email after the end of today's session. So it will have PDF slides of all of the presentations today, as well as the recording. And really quick, I do see a question about where to get miscanthus. I'm going to let Travis kind of weigh in on that one, as he has a lot of those answers. But also, Emily, I don't want to call on you, but if you have any insight on like very hyper-local miscanthus producers that you know are sterilized biomass varieties, would love to hear your thoughts on that.
So my thoughts are pretty straightforward at this point, Marley, and that's buy your giganteas from a reputable source. If it's large acreages, or anything with three-digit acreages at least, I do go through agrotech because I do have confidence in um, the there's a word for it, that their material is what they say it is, and that it doesn't have anything else in it. I think there is a risk of getting material that you don't want in some of these pots.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
I'll jump in too, Marley. Thank you. And Emily, thanks for the comments there. But absolutely, I think Marley hit it perfectly with making sure you have a reputable source. There are, several nurseries across the U.S. that do sell Giganteus, but I'll always follow up and make sure they have the right paperwork. And I'll share a little bit more about our quality control program in my presentation. But I would concur with them that that there are other types out there, and so make sure you source from a reputable source.
Thanks, Travis. Cool. And with that, I will pass it to Brad Kasberg. If you want to share your screen, Brad, go ahead, and the floor is yours.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks again, Marley. Yeah, my name is Brad Kasberg, a sustainable landscape specialist at Argonne National Laboratory. And I'm here to talk about the geospatial tools for perennial planting. Really, what we want to do is try to understand how we can help map where perennial bioenergy crops can go in the landscape. And Marley hit it on the head earlier, but I do want to talk about some of this from the geospatial perspective. Our project here, we aim to support the transition of portions of land to grow perennial bioenergy crops. We're not interested in this current iteration of the project to convert total, all fields or a whole field into perennial bioenergy crop. And really that's in response to some other market fluctuations over the past few decades where things like corn ethanol has created a situation where there's an encroachment on non-agricultural lands to be converted into corn for ethanol. The idea here is that we want to transition marginal, less productive land to perennial bioenergy crops. Really, with the idea here that we can offset potential losses from the unproductive segments of land. Because again, we have, imagine we have 40 acres of land and there's a 10-acre strip that is bounded by a creek or a floodplain or something like that. And that 10 acres, is always a difficult thing for the farmer, landowner, operator to work with, whether it's getting seed in on time or it's getting a sufficient yield. So the idea here is that if we can take those difficult plots of land and convert those into perennial bioenergy crops, you're reducing that headache for the operator or landowner, and you're potentially offsetting those losses because you're not just transitioning to something that could potentially yield more. You're also reducing the amount of inputs needed in the field because hypothetically, perennial bioenergy crops could operate with little or, ideally no additional inputs like fertilizer and other chemicals, but still we anticipate some application of fertilizer, but it can operate at an application rate lower than what the existing crops would have taken on. So again, we're really trying to understand just where those unproductive segments of land are, and provide that tool to transition. And ultimately, at the end of the day, once we've identified those, we want to assess the additional economic opportunities that can come out of this. But the question is, of course, and the question we've tried to answer with our geospatial tools is, how do we know what portions of land to convert? And so in answering that question, we've crafted Super Beast. Its full given name is Scaling Up Perennial Bioenergy Economics and Ecosystem Services Tool, but its nickname's a little easier to say. And again, this identifies marginal farmland optimal for perennial bioenergy crop conversion. And in so doing, explores existing and potential bioenergy networks across the supply chain. Now, with this, we can then assess the potential benefits and the additional value in dollars of perennial bioenergy crops, because that's really what is going to raise a lot of the questions in decision making for these types of differing and new crop management strategies. So what we are doing is trying to take a tool that operates at a multifunctional, multi-scale approach, which is currently working for the Midwest region. And I know we got a lot of folks around Kentucky and Tennessee here likely, so I'm sorry we do not have that set up just yet. We're working to expand that. But this tool works to assess individual fields, and you can build up all the way up to multiple counties or multiple watersheds. And again, those watersheds operate at different scales, right? From Huck 8 to Huck 12, we can sort of navigate the assessment to the user's end goal. And to highlight that further, this can be used for farm management planning, for crop, decision making, and that's for farmers, operators, landowners. But on the totally opposite end, we can look at bioeconomy infrastructure. So if you're an operator of a biofuel facility or a biofuels, production company, you can really look at where there's a density of potential bioenergy crops to be grown in order to locate your facilities or to conduct outreach. Similarly, if you're a storage facility or something in between regarding the shipment, storage, or kind of mid-market opportunities here, we can make those assessments. And also, if you're a land use planner, if you're a soil water conservation district employee, some other watershed manager group, or a land use planner, you can use this to guide your perspectives on where policies could best apply. So you can start to use this tool to understand, how your policies will impact the landscape and identify potential landowners for outreach. And so we talk about marginal lands, and there are a lot of different ways we can define marginality. Of course, that's, marginal is in many ways reflective of the user or or whoever's thinking about it. So we just want to really highlight what our approach is to marginal lands. And so we have 7 types of marginal lands that feed into Super Beast's analysis. The first being a low productivity index on the National Commodity Crop Productivity Index for corn. So we're basically saying if this field or this segment is producing low enough corn, yeah, it's probably marginal in some capacity. Then we also can look at aspects having to do with water within the soil. So drainage class, how well does the soil drain? Flooding and ponding frequency, how often are we dealing with, would corn be dealing with muddy feet? Um, and then runoff risk, based on the soil quality and the slope aspect, things like that. Really what's at risk here in terms of soil loss from these annual crop production modes. And then in regards to water quality aspects, nitrate leaching and pesticide leaching is another important one. Again, we're looking at land that could potentially release a lot of nitrate into the waterways. So if we have a system that we know that we are producing or we are adding a lot of nitrate to the system, then compounding that with the fact that the soil may leach excessive nitrates compared to other soil types, suddenly that becomes very of interest. So this is an example of the marginal lands. This is a map showing cumulative. So light blue is one marginal land is identified on that soil type. And then we have up to 2, 3, and then more than 4. And we do that because we recognize that just because you may have one marginal land type doesn't mean the land necessarily manifests itself as marginal. You may recognize that, if you're a farmer, oh yeah, I know that this section of my field is always wet and it's very annoying to work with. But at the end of the day, you may not see too much of an issue in regards to yield, or the difference isn't sufficient enough to make that change. But if there's all these compounding issues, then that might be reflected in your own experience, and may help guide some interest in changing some fields. And zooming out to a whole watershed, I just wanted to highlight, the difference. You can see here, this is clearly floodplains and edge of soils and waterways and things like that, where we're seeing the dark purple, which is multiple marginalities. And then it gets down to multiple, at a larger scale. It's a little harder to see, but you can see at different watersheds just the different levels of marginality occurring. And so our tool lets us look at these seven different marginalities weighted according to the user's need. And so you can look at the marginal land data that we've analyzed in order to make it relevant to you. And so what we've done, we've assessed the soil at in the Midwest purely on land that is currently agricultural. So we have that mask over it. We're not looking at every inch of soil in the Midwest. So, the downtown Chicago is not included in the assessment, but the outskirts of Cook County are. But we look at areas that have been agricultural land in a recent enough time to assess for suitability. So we can look at this field, which has a creek running through it. You can see, that there's clearly water, wet spots along the floodplain, and it dries up, on the outskirts. And so I can assess that using our tool by prioritizing different marginalities. And so let's say hypothetically, I'm a landowner or operator, and my main concern is productivity. I can prioritize that national crop productivity index above all else. And if I do that, I can see that the heart of the field, right at the center of the field, clearly influenced by the creek, that is an area that is of concern. And so I might say, okay, how do I design my targeted landscape around that? Alternatively, if you're soil water conservation district, or you're a farmer landowner who knows that after enough years you've grown sick of dealing with that floodplain. You could look at the flood and soil moisture context and see, okay, I can really sort of guide that. And alternatively, if you're a soil and water conservation district person focused purely on runoff and nitrate leaching, you start to see that, okay, maybe this field isn't worth investigating and adopting for land use conversion. And to look at a different field that kind of says the opposite, this is a more upland site with more of a slope. Flood and soil moisture says not to do much. Productivity tells you, okay, there's some hot spots that may be worth considering. But soil and water quality conservation, that's really lighting up and telling you, okay, these areas are of concern, likely having to do with runoff risk given average slope in the area. So the idea here is that you can really tailor make this at multiple scales and at multiple marginalities. I want to just highlight that this tool is online. You can jot this down. I did think to make this accessible. I think on Zoom you can click on links, but I'm sorry, not this one. But it is a website that's free to use. We have tutorials and everything on it that can let you kind of get into the nitty-gritty regarding how to run the tool. But I will go ahead and take us there for a quick second. So this is the launch pad. And again, we have updates whenever we provide new information. But let me pull it up. And again, we have the Midwest here. We could zoom in. We could look at these composite data sets. And we can analyze an area. And that's what I was talking about, multiple uses. So I can do by county, by Huck 8 to 12. I can upload a shape file of my farm or study area, or I could just simply draw. And I can analyze this area. Once we do that, we can also run an analysis, which I have done. I did this for Cass County, Michigan, which spells out to you the marginal land types, how many acres within the study area or you've provided, and then provides maps of each marginality. At the end of the day, this is a guidance tool that we've refined through the course of this project. We've thrown this up at different webinars and different workshops to say, to the folks, like, this is a tool that we want you to use and please use it, but also how can we make it better for you? So we've been refining it. And so we have questionnaires as well for that. But I do want to get to the heart of the updates that we've been working on. This is a tool that's still being refined. We are still interested in those co-benefits of targeted perennial bioenergy crops. regarding, water quality impacts with SWOT, carbon sequestration, greenhouse gas changes, biodiversity, hunting, pollinators, wildlife, all of these different things that can really have compounding economic impacts. Might sound a little strange, but wildlife viewing, birding is $1 billion industry. And Illinois has, for example, great resources for that up and down the waterways. So to kind of build on top of that is a really interesting opportunity. We want to export our report data into geospatial formats so that people can look at the map, but then also download it and input it into the tools that they're using. And then ultimately create a bit of what I just labeled as a crop filter to identify counties suitable for any given bioenergy crop. So I can look at a site, I can look at a region and say, okay, we know that there is plenty of bioenergy opportunity, but what about specifically for miscanthus? What about specifically for shrub willow or switchgrass? So that we can really help folks really intuit the market opportunities and the growing opportunities for folks. So with that, I want to thank you for the time spent working on this. The link again is pasted above. I'm really happy to walk through anything. I know I showed the website really briefly, but if folks have any questions, comments, concerns, check out the website. Email us at bioenergy@anl.gov, or email me directly at bcasberg@anl.gov. And those should be clickable for you to get in contact with me. So thank you.
Thanks, Brad. I just wanted to raise a question from Bill in the chat that says, are there many end users or conservation interests who have taken up the Super Beast tool to guide decisions to date? And if so, what regions are those interests located?
I can't speak for individual specific, soil water conservation districts or anything, but we've been doing these workshops in mostly in Illinois, southwest Wisconsin, southern Minnesota as well. Yeah, we've just been getting the word out, trying to make it available to as many as possible. But thank you.
If I could jump in and add to that too, part of the work that Brad and I have been doing for the past couple years has been working additionally one-on-one with farmers and landowners. And so we've created custom 5-year farm management plans for folks that did include a Super Beast analysis to inform some of the site selection and suitability, to just provide context on some of the marginal characteristics that can be addressed by adopting a perennial bioenergy crop. So we have worked individually, and most of that work has been done in Illinois. Actually, a lot in Southern Illinois too, which has been exciting because there's some prime landscape in that area to adopt these crops. So yeah, there's been some one-on-one support with folks for Super Beast, but I'm also not familiar with any like conservation organizations or anybody else using it yet. But we hope if anybody wants to spread the word, we recommend that you do so. There's also another question from Travis for you, Brad, asking about the areas of USA. What areas of the USA does Super Beast software make these assessments?
Yes. So right now, it's a little faint, but well, to keep it simple, anything you would call the Midwest, that's north of the Ohio River Valley. That's the region. We are north and west of the Ohio River Valley. We are working on, because of projects, connections like that we've made, like in this webinar, Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, and Oklahoma are sort of the next phase. But yeah, we've been just like slowly expanding out from Illinois for this type of work.
Any other questions for Brad?
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Brad. I do really quick before I pass it over to Travis, just want to elevate to Brad's note about sharing feedback. If you do decide to try out Super Beast and have ideas on how it can be improved or ways that it would make beyond the geography expansion, ways to improve the tool or to help better inform decision making, please let us know. We're always really interested in hearing how these things can be more applicable to a wider audience or to just individual farmers and landowners too. So please keep that in mind. And we do have one more question I see in the chat. It says, have any individual farmers used Super Beast for their decision making and not just conservation districts? Yes. So we have. I've worked one-on-one with some farmers and landowners. Who primarily have vegetable operations and pasture land that has informed some of the site selection for perennial bioenergy crops. The vegetable farmer I was working with in Northern Illinois actually was interested in adopting native prairie for buffers between the vegetable fields and some of the neighbors' conventional fields as a little bit of an ecosystem buffer and some native habitat, with the idea of potentially harvesting that biomass down the road. So Super Beast helped identify where those plots are best suited. Also just kind of reinforcing with data some of the ideas that the farmer already had. So it's more just a confirmation tool than just completely altering the decision making at play. So yeah. Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
Ellen,
do
let's take
want
next.
to add uh, about the sort of individual level. It's uh, you know, we're this is a raster-based analysis, right? So it's a bunch of squares, which sure squares are nice in Midwest agriculture, but it doesn't speak to what's actually happening on the ground and how to design it. So um, yeah, part of the really interesting conversations I've had at like workshops and webinars was um, transitioning that data from, the analytical super beast to how does that how does that look? How would you plant that on the ground? Because if you have here, let me go back to my one sample. This one uh, on the bottom, well, the bottom maps, you know, the farmer wouldn't just draw all or plant switchgrass or miscanthus in every instance where it's yellow. There'd be some design choices. So it's been really helpful to sort of and I hope Marley can test this as well, but working with the landowners to say, if this is what we're seeing, what sort of like more organic or more like appropriate format would you kind of see this taking place? And so we're trying to take that insight and feed that into some representation of it in later iterations of Super Beast.
Awesome. Well, if there are any additional questions, let's add those to the chat and Brad and I can help answer those in the meantime. But I want to make sure that Travis has the floor because I know a lot of folks are really interested on the state of the miscanthus industry right now, and we'd love to hear about what's happening at Agrotech and Polterra. So yeah, without further ado, I'll pass it to Travis and you can take it away.
Great. Thank you, Marley. And Brad, love the name of the software, Super Beast. It's a credible tool, and I look forward to learning more about it. So can everyone see my screen? I'm in presentation mode, so hopefully you can see the screen.
We can't see your screen. You
Okay.
could be in presentation mode and still have to share.
Okay, hang on. Technical problem. How about now?
I don't see anything yet, no.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay.
I don't see your slides. There we go. Okay.
All right. Are we good? All
We
right.
can see we can see your presentation mode, Travis, but it does make the first slide smaller. So if you have, do you have two windows open, one presentation mode and the other the main
Um,
slide?
I don't. Um,
Okay.
I'm
You can
sorry.
go to
Can
you
you
go
see?
to presenter view, it may pop up with two windows. That's the um hmm. You can zoom in on that one if you'd prefer.
Hey,
Um,
Marley,
yeah.
there's actually a little swap screen when he goes, sorry, if he goes back to the presenter mode, starts his slideshow.
Okay, hang on. Share. Would it be desktop 2? And then let's see.
And if you
Is that a
your
larger?
slideshow, and then you see at the very top, there's end show, tips, and swap displays. If you hit swap displays, it'll switch. Now we see exactly what you want us to see, and you should still be able to see your notes.
Okay, I learned something new today.
Me too. Thank you, Jean.
Yeah, sorry about the technical issues, but I'm happy to join today's discussion. So Marley covered the planting and production of perennial grasses and the benefits in the region, and Brad also covered the locations where best to grow these crops. So today my talk is on the state of the industry and potential uses. So I'd like to thank American Farmland Trust and Oregon National Laboratories for inviting me for this presentation. I'd like to start out and tell you a little bit about our company. So our company is completely focused on growing sustainable solutions for future generations. We're doing that by revolutionizing agriculture through the establishment of perennial energy crops to enhance sustainability. Perennial energy crops protect water, soil, and air. And they're also considered a carbon negative ingredient to fuel the new bioeconomy. I love this slide. Starting out this slide, there's a picture of a large scale miscanthus production on the right. This photo was taken in January in Cambridge, Maryland. As you can see, that land type is covered with grass, whereas the traditional row crop ground to the left there is bare during that winter region. So that really, to Brad's point, where these grasses fit into the landscape and how they fit from a sustainability perspective, I think this photo does a nice job capturing that. The history of our company, we're not a new company. We were founded in 2010. And since then, we have developed commercial planting systems for energy crops. We've expanded commercial scale production across the U.S. for various markets. We also have increased our nursery farm locations regionally to serve these new and upcoming markets, as well as develop products for commercial scale markets such as poultry bedding, bio-based products, as well as products in human and animal health. And then finally, we recently co-founded a bioenergy company called Polterra, which I'll speak to a little bit further in my presentation. So a little bit on our IP. We do work with the sterile type of miscanthus giganteus. There are 3 types here in the U.S. Freedom and Nagara are patented types. And the Illinois clone, which most folks are familiar with, is more of a public type that came out of the University of Illinois. Additionally, we bought genetic assets from a genetic group we now hold 6 patents and hope to bring more advanced types to the market in the future. But today we only work with the sterile types like Freedom. To hit on Marley's point about quality control, that's such an important part of building the industry. We have a one-of-a-kind quality control program. All of our foundation stocks where we provide rhizomes from are certified by third parties. As you can see, there's a North Carolina crop improvement certification here. We provide that to any growers interested in growing miscanthus. And those fields are inspected annually for seed germination or any kind of other contamination before we sell that to the market. Additionally, we have nursery locations across the U.S. Today, most of our production comes out of North Carolina, where we've got over 2,200 acres of nursery fields. Those nursery fields would support as much as 30,000 acres of rhizome stock for large-scale planting if needed. One of the highlights that Marley hit on in the production aspect was that unlike seeded crops, miscanthus is planted by rhizome. So the closer we have our rhizome inventory to new markets, the lower the production cost will be. So in the future, we will have regional nursery farm locations across the U.S. You see some of those pending locations noted here in the Midwest, Maryland, and the Southeast. Additionally, outside of our genetic assets, we also invented some technology. So Marley showed some slides of some home-built transplanters. Those are very costly in terms of cost of establishment with labor and very slow production systems. So really to bring this grass to more of a commercial aspect, we invented a system called the AccuYield system. It starts with a lifting process from our nursery fields. We run that material through a processor that itemizes, sorts, and cleans the roots for transport out to commercial farms. And then finally, we developed a fully mechanical planter that plants large-scale plantings very efficiently and precisely in partnership with Spudnik, which is a potato manufacturing company from Idaho. So this system, once it's been implemented, increases performance in the first couple years. Marley mentioned a lot of times these grasses, you've got to wait till the third year to have a meaningful harvest. Our system, we're able to have about a third of the full yield in the first year, about 60% in the second year, and then the third year on, we hit that 100% yield moving forward. So we've increased the performance of these grasses in those early years with this system, and we've also driven down the cost by taking out the labor components for commercial scale planting. These are some of our locations where we both produce miscanthus and we also have partners, industry partners. So today we have production in 16 states serving all different types of markets. I'll just reiterate Marley's comments about sustainability. Really, there's three pillars to sustainability. There's a social, environmental, and economic aspect. These grasses bring new opportunities for farmers. Today we're very limited on the types of crops that we can grow, and having sustainable crops like miscanthus can introduce new opportunities and new markets for farmers. We talked about all the environmental impacts such as carbon sequestration, reducing soil erosion and nutrient runoff. And then from an economic standpoint, it's just a tremendous resource, right? You plant one time, upfront cost, but you can reap 20 plus years of benefit from productivity. So we like to look at that establishment cost as really lower than traditional cost when amortized over long periods of time. Additionally, for industry, it's a consistent feedstock. So when we talk about poultry bedding and why it's important to animals, you can get a consistent feedstock no matter if you're in the middle of the country or in the East Coast. Miscanthus can provide a very consistent product nationwide. And then finally, if you're a biofuel producer, the environment's doing all the work. It's naturally drying in the field, so it reduces the amount of pre-processing necessary. It also sequesters minerals into the soil and into the root system. So your above ground feedstock has very little ash and constituents that would be bad for biofuel production. All of these things are great, right? We can plant it. We have a meaningful environmental benefit from the use of the crop. But what's the holdup? Really, it starts with the market. Every farmer that I've met is interested about the market. If there's not a market that provides meaningful income, it's very difficult for farmers to grow new crops. This is a slide that just depicts all the different markets we're working with today. I mentioned animal bedding, but we are doing work in bio-based products, biopower, textile fibers, biochemicals, ingredients for human and animal health, composites, and pulp and paper. And I'll go a little bit into each in some further slides. So I always like to bring this slide up. This is probably a slide that's in your science class, but when we think about traditional crops, we think about the seed and the amount of energy and constituents that come from like a corn kernel or soybean oil. Grasses have similar opportunities. The cell walls and plant cells within the stalks are a tremendous amount of different constituents, so we can extract hemicellulose, lignin, and cellulose from these crops. It can be further refined into polymers and sugars for biofuel, as well as composites and adhesives. So really, it's just a deconstruction of these crops that can open up new market opportunities. And when you really think about it, cellulose and lignin are the two most abundant polymers on the globe. So to get there, it takes a lot of different steps, right? So our first step in developing is to really develop markets that provide high profit margins to farmers, where miscanthus has a competitive advantage, and growers can be certain that the market has no technology risk. We also really target the best growing regions. So right now, plant hardiness zones 7 and 8 is where really miscanthus performs ideally, or regions where you have 30 plus inches of annual rainfall. So as our growers begin to grow miscanthus and serve these markets and become profitable, we continue to work on new opportunities, but we do that with industry partners, producers, and university partners. So through those partnerships, we provide miscanthus samples, whether it be in hammer milled powder form, or just raw bales or chopped from fields. We provide that to our industry partners and universities to do testing and validation to make these new scale products. And then once those new scale products are developed and made, we work hard with our industry partners to bring them commercially to market. So I'll go into each market that we serve today and why these markets are important to us. So I like to start out and talk about the poultry market. It's really a market that we didn't get into originally. We actually were growing for a biofuel producer in North Carolina, and our grower there had a turkey operation. He had a hard time sourcing wood shavings to support his turkeys, and so we worked with him in NC State to develop a poultry bedding product that worked phenomenal compared to wood shavings for his operation. What I really like about the poultry industry is it's a large market, so it's over 300 million plus in terms of bedding needs, but it's also $1 billion market with very few companies serving that market. The trends in the industry is that poultry is the lowest cost protein. As population and new communities increase their revenues, poultry will be a protein that continues to grow. So here in the US, we see about 12% growth in that market annually. Also, consumers push for food safety and improvements in production. So we look at reducing antibiotics, and that requires really good conditions in the house, which supports more bedding. From an animal welfare standpoint, the upstream customers like McDonald's, Chipotle's, Costco, they all look at bird welfare as being a very important piece in sourcing their protein. So when we think about poultry houses having pneumonia because of poor bedding, or birds having lesions on their feet due to poor bedding, this is really another benefit for poultry producers to improve their animal welfare. And then from an environmental standpoint, we already know miscanthus provides those environmental incentives. So when we're looking at companies who want to look at reducing their scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, miscanthus can really provide those benefits. Here we got a picture of miscanthus grown right next to some poultry houses. So unlike wood that comes from a mill, it can be grown on farm near the barns, reducing emissions from the barns, and then supplied right in those barns as an on-site bedding. These are the companies that we are working with today. So a lot of these companies you're very familiar with. The picture here on the left just provides a sense of what our bedding looks like in a commercial barn. Happy chickens, happy life. I think bedding is a great market that we continue to support and grow with. In terms of our current supply, we have about 80% of it going into the poultry market. But one upcoming and new opportunity that I'm quite excited about is our partnership in Polterra. Agrotech is an owner in Polterra along with technology partners. We started a company to really serve the poultry industry. We provide miscanthus bedding to growers, and we also provide a service of cleaning those barns out and bringing that used manure from poultry barns to an anaerobic digester. There, in that process, we convert to finished products such as renewable natural gas, CO2, commercial fertilizers. So we're quite excited about our first plant here in North Carolina, but I do think that Polterra has a great fit across the entire poultry landscape. It not only provides services and benefits to growers, but it also introduces finished products that are not only renewable and sustainable based, but it also creates some opportunities with poultry companies to source CO2 locally and farmers to source more commercial fertilizers locally. So this is a company that our first project will be here in North Carolina, but we will be looking to add additional plants across the U.S. I'll speak a little bit on other biopower projects that we're currently partnered on. So we started this project back in 2014 with the University of Iowa. There we're going to grow up to 2,200 acres. That'll produce about 22,000 tons of miscanthus. That miscanthus fiber will replace coal at the university's on-campus boiler, and thermal energy will be produced as well as steam to support the university's cooling system there on campus. This is a one-of-a-kind project, the only project that I'm aware of in the U.S. that's using energy grasses for power production. And the grass is grown locally, and this project has received a number of awards, but some of the larger awards they received was a Governor's Environmental Excellence Award, as well as a EPA Green Power Partnership Award. Marley hit a little bit on erosion control. So erosion control is a great market for these grasses. A lot of that fiber goes into on-market sediment retention devices like Silt Zero that's produced right there in Illinois. We also have a brand called Agro Wattle, which we serve the Southeast and Midwest with. And so these products are used every day in construction and road projects. Additionally, we have worked with our farmers to sell straw bales, similar to wheat straw or barley straw used in seeding applications. It's a really nice fit with our bedding industry because we can take a first pass forage chop to produce a bedding product. And then we have residue on the fields that's very similar to like wheat straw and can be baled with traditional baling equipment. So these small and large bales going into that seeding market is a great opportunity. Additionally, we've worked with some hydromulch companies to take our fiber and further process it into hydromulch. This is a great market opportunity for miscanthus just in that seeding application. And then non-woven mats that you're familiar with, like straw blankets that are used to cover seed and reduce erosion as well. Some other bio-based products that we have developed in partnership. We developed a cattle feeder, which is an interesting container produced in Minnesota. Company is called Worthington Container. They make this container for Crystal X, but you can buy this at your local feed and farm stores. It's a container that's filled with salt and minerals for cattle. You can set these barrels out in fields and they'll just decompose versus a plastic container that might blow away in a windstorm. This is really meant to be organic and just break down naturally in the field. Some of the bigger partnerships we've developed over the last couple of years is our partnership with Genera, the first of a kind biorefinery located in Vonore, Tennessee. This is a picture of the plant there on the left, so you can see quite large scale plant. It brings in over 80,000 tons of perennial grass fiber, including switchgrass and miscanthus. That it goes through a process to pulp and mold into fiber products that are shown there in the top right. So today they're making products like to-go containers, bowls, plates, as well as meat tray packs for the poultry and beef industry. This is a remarkable accomplishment by the Genera group, and happy to be a partner on this particular project. I think they have great market opportunity here in the U.S. A lot of these products come from overseas, China primarily, and introducing new manufacturing that can support farmers growing perennial grasses here in the U.S. just has a tremendous opportunity. Along with the packaging side, we recently did a partnership with Plant Switch, which is based here in Sanford, North Carolina. They're a group that has developed a process to make cutlery, knives, forks, and spoons. You can see the picture there on the right. So these products are made with resins and biomass crops such as miscanthus, and they do use rice hulls in some situations. So a great new product opportunity and application for biomass crop. Also, we have a strong partnership with a human and animal health company called Belcam, based out of New Jersey. In 2024, we began to supply them with miscanthus powder that comes from a further processing operation. This powder is used in their process for spray drying. So when you think about liquids turning to dry powders, spray drying is a process that needs a carrier or a product that has high absorption rate. Miscanthus has a great fit for this industry because it's non-GMO, organically certified, and has great properties to dry liquid products. So we're quite excited about this industry and opportunity to expand for this ingredient market. This is just some of the pre-commercial product pipelines we're working on. So we're working in that horticulture space with planting pots, substrates. We've done a lot of work with NC State on using miscanthus as a replacement to peat moss for substrate media for the large scale greenhouse industry. Miscanthus can also be further processed into biochar, which is a great soil amendment to add carbon back to soils and enrich soils over time. We've done some work with pet care companies looking at alternatives to clay-based litters, which is a promising industry, and we look forward to further development there. We do have a packaging operation out of Iowa currently where we sell bag bedding into the horse bedding market or retail market for not only horses, but small animals. And then building materials. I think this is an up and coming market with fiber boards, also concrete additives and insulation. The building industry is a very difficult industry to decarbonize. So when companies are looking at locking in carbon, long-term building materials has a great fit for carbon negative feedstocks like miscanthus. And then finally, we talked a little bit about biofuels. SAF has been a hot topic in terms of decarbonizing the aviation industry, and we are working with various groups in that space to develop miscanthus-based aviation fuel. So that really concludes my talk. I did just want to highlight one other opportunity. Dr. Heaton, who was on the call earlier, had a conflict during my talk and dropped off. I wanted to share some of the work she's doing there in Illinois. The University of Illinois has started a biomass innovation hub. This hub will be targeted in the I-states. And you see all the sponsors here that are part of this initiative. Let's see. Oops, there we go. Really, the focus here of the hub is to connect academia with industry. They really call the academia to industry the valley of death, because a lot of innovation that comes from university never makes it to industry. So the biomass hub is really an effort to bridge that gap. And so we are looking to do that through the development of perennial grasses there in the I region to support this future manufacturing of products like biofuels and biochemicals. The target of the hub is to establish 10,000 acres by 2027, and those products being used by 2029. So this is a little bit about the hub. Dr. Heaton's emails in top right-hand corner of the slide here. If anyone has any questions or is interested in participating in the hub, please reach out. We're looking forward to connecting with growers in the Illinois region to support this development. So again, thank you guys for the time today. Happy to answer any questions, but I'm glad everyone could join, and hopefully there's a lot of interest with miscanthus production.
Thanks so much, Travis. I did want to address one question that was in the chat about the growing zones for miscanthus. I know you have some maybe connections to folks who are growing in maybe some of the northern regions of Iowa, but we had a question about folks growing north of Zone 7. Is it feasible if we're in a rainier part of Zone 5A or B to grow miscanthus and have, viable acreages of it?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. We grow as far north as Schooler, Wisconsin. So, what the key is in the more northern regions is to have good snow cover in the winter. As you get further west with lower snow cover, there is an issue with potentially winter kill on miscanthus. Soils that get below 30 degrees are not ideal. At 4 inches deep at 30 degrees, for long periods of time is where you can really experience winter kill. Additionally, the further north you get, the less productive miscanthus gets. So states like Iowa, Wisconsin, there's just lower productivity than in southern Illinois. So really that central part of the U.S. That has great rainfall is really the ideal area. But having said that, I think Brad brought up where it best fits in more northern applications where soils just might not be suitable for traditional crops. You can put out perennials, lower cost to produce, and also capture some revenue from that. So I think we look at it as miscanthus has a fit to just to the landscape to be just a co-product along with a farmer's operation.
That's great. Thank you. There is one more question about getting started. So noting that there's multiple market opportunities across the region, folks who may have interest in starting to grow miscanthus, how do they get connected with you for contract services, or how would they get connected to a market opportunity in their area?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really the challenge we're trying to bridge for growers is connecting them with the markets. And so, we've been working hard to find new markets that provide meaningful income to farmers. So please reach out. My contact information there was in the slide, and would be happy to have discussions about what's in that particular grower's region.
And I'll share Travis's contact information in the follow-up email too, for folks who want to get connected with Agrotech or Polterra. But yeah, if there's any other questions, we have plenty of time. I buffered a lot of time for us today, and we are miraculously ahead of schedule. So yeah, encourage questions if there are any. So there is another question asking about northern climates and miscanthus productivity. Um, is this because of the shorter season or the lower amounts of rainfall in that region?
Yeah, it really comes from the shorter growing season. These grasses are not genetically modified to climates. These are naturally occurring hybrids. They've adapted to their areas, and so day length is an issue as you get further north.
Um, there was a question about mention of supply chain challenges of processing. I know you mentioned that the Valley of Death in referencing the Biomass Innovation Hub, but curious if you have any more insight related to supply chain challenges, even if they're in more like centralized areas within the Midwest or the broader region. Yeah, if you have any insight to that, that'd be helpful to know.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as markets grow, so will processing. But today we lean a lot on toll manufacturers. So whether it's milling to serve a market, there are different companies in certain regions that will do milling services. Our bagging operation, where we sell horse bedding, and we work with companies that have existing bagging operations. When they can run a new product and leverage a new opportunity, that works well. But as those markets get bigger, obviously new and more manufacturing will come on board. From a harvest standpoint, Marley mentioned the aggressiveness of miscanthus. There are other crops that are far more aggressive on equipment than miscanthus. Here in North Carolina, farmers grow sage, which is a grass that provides more of a floral market that puts a lot of damage on machines. We look at, how can we work with farmers and their existing equipment? So we've worked with farmers on different ways to harvest with different types of equipment that can be utilized. So I wouldn't be scared if you're a producer and you don't have the harvesting equipment. Typically, when we contract with farmers, or landowners, we have different ways of doing so. We'll either contract as a grower where you perform all the activities to serve the market, or if you just want to grow and not harvest, there's that opportunity as well. And then if you're a landowner and you just want to step away and have someone do all of the services, we've got that option for you as well. And for farmers who want to stay in farming but want to do less work and have less equipment, I think these perennial grasses provide a perfect fit.
I totally agree with that. There is one final question, and it's more of a policy question. So curious, I'm very curious because I know we all probably have different perspectives on how we think incentives may play out over the next couple years. But do you have any thoughts on what's happening on a federal policy level related to the Farm Bill? Maybe if we anticipate opportunities for integration of these crops in the future.
Yeah, I think these are all personal comments, so take them with a grain of salt. But I do think that both sides of the current administration and past administration, have levels of made in America. How can we produce more products from our landscape? How can we create more job opportunities here in the U.S.? And I think perennials will play a big part in that. And we're already starting to see that with some of the biorefineries that have been built. I think from a production standpoint, it's a great point. I think it's an area that needs some additional focus from USDA. Perennials don't get the same support that traditional row crops do from like a insurance perspective, just a supplementation perspective. I'd like to see more legislation around that where they could help farmers maybe with that upfront establishment or maybe an annual payment in the event of a down year weather-wise. We are picking up some new opportunities with states that have a water quality focus. You can think about programs like stream restoration or a wetland construction or saturated buffers. There's not programs that are specific to energy grasses, but the energy grasses provide more meaningful benefit than a lot of the practices that are paid for. So we do have some states that are starting to support perennial energy grass producers by, paying an annual payment for water quality or helping them with that upfront establishment cost. And so I think we're gonna see a lot more of that type of opportunity for farmers.
Yeah, that's a great point. I did just want to add to miscanthus is not often written in, but sometimes with regional conservation partnership projects, RCPPs, sometimes there is inclusion of energy grasses in the scopes of those projects too, and can offer some financial incentives for growers within watersheds or within those project areas. So there is another opportunity there, but you typically see that with switchgrass. And not quite miscanthus, but yeah, I think building up the opportunities like that can really make some headway in seeing more acres on the ground. Are there any final questions for Travis? If not, I'm going to just quickly share my screen and close us out. And yeah, we'll end quite early today, and that's totally okay. But thank you so much to Travis. I learned a lot from that presentation, and I hope y'all did too. If there are additional questions for him, please let me know, and I will make sure to share his email in our follow-up email. But really quick, I just want to close us out with this final slide here. Just as a quick reminder and just to uplift some of the work that we're doing to keep this work going beyond just the webinars and the workshops. Our project does offer free technical assistance for perennial bioenergy crops, including switchgrass, miscanthus, native prairie mixes, but also shrub willow and hybrid poplar if there is of interest for short rotation woody crops. And so if you're looking for just additional resources, we offer free phone consultations, virtual site and suitability assessments for the individual crops. Brad can jump in and help with Super Beast demonstrations if there's additional questions or if folks want to really dive into the Super Beast tool. We absolutely offer that and love to talk data. And also, if you're looking just for additional information about the environmental co-benefits or any sort of market opportunities that may be emerging, please let us know. And if you want, you can scan this QR code. It will take you to a form to add some information for context. But usually I'm the face of those conversations. And so if you want to have an additional chat about any of the topics that we touched on today, that's a great way to stay connected with the project. And just wanted to make sure that our emails were there. These will also be in the follow-up email. But if you would like to stay in contact with Brad or myself, our emails are here. And with that, we'll close it out. And I'll just make sure to elevate this eval in the follow-up email. But if folks are wanting to share any thoughts on how we can improve these webinars or just any of the topics that we've discussed today, I really encourage folks to share those thoughts with us. And so I just dropped that link into the chat. There should be no permission issues now. I know there was some accessibility issues when it was initially sent, so that should be okay for folks to access. And again, with that QR code, I'll just drop this link in the chat too. This is for our TA requests. If you wanted to have one of those phone consultations, or just would like to request additional resources, you can put your info into the link that I just dropped there. And And needless to say, all of this will be in the follow-up email. But yeah, really very appreciative for you all joining on today and listening in. If there are questions, we love to keep these conversations going, so I really encourage folks to stay connected. But if not, I really appreciate you being here today and hope you all have a good rest of your day. Take care, all.
Thanks, everyone.